Ayaan sat at his desk, his fingers tapping absent-mindedly on the surface as he stared at the homework assignment in front of him. The words on the paper blurred together. He hated math. But it wasn't just the subject that bothered him. It was the endless silence that filled the house when his parents weren't around. At 10 years old, Ayaan was beginning to understand the feeling of being invisible. His parents were busy with their careers, and most days, they were too caught up in their own world to notice his loneliness. His mother worked long hours as a lawyer, and his father was always traveling for business. Though they were kind, they were often distant. Dinner was usually a hurried affair, and when they were home, they spoke more to each other than to him. Ayaan missed the days when he had a best friend, someone who understood his quiet nature, someone who would talk to him about everything and anything. That friend had moved away 2 years ago, and since then, Ayaan had kept to himself. He spent most of his days reading books, drawing, and wandering the backyard, hoping for something exciting to happen. But nothing did. Maybe if I had a dog. He thought to himself, his mind wandering. A dog would be a good friend. A dog wouldn't care about his awkwardness or the fact that he spent more time alone than most kids. It was that same day, after finishing his homework, that he heard the sound of a car pulling up outside. He glanced out the window and saw his mother getting out of the car, holding something wrapped in a blanket. It looked like a dog. Ayaan's heart skipped a beat. Could it be? Was it a stray she had found? He quickly ran to the front door. "Mom, is that a dog?" His mother smiled. "Yes, Ayaan, we found him on the side of the road. He was hurt, but we're going to take him to the vet. I thought you might want to come with us." Ayaan could barely believe it. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming. A dog. His very own dog. His mother had brought it home for him. Ayaan couldn't stop smiling as he walked beside his mother, carrying the blanket-wrapped dog to the car. The air felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted off his chest. He had never imagined something like this happening. His wish for a companion, for a friend, was finally coming true. The dog looked up at him with tired, amber eyes. Its fur was matted and tangled, and there was a faint limp in its step. Yet, there was something about its gaze that made Ayaan's heart ache. This dog had been through a lot, just like him. When they reached the vet, Ayaan stayed close, watching anxiously as the doctor examined the dog. He could see how scared the dog was, its eyes darting around as it was prodded and poked. Ayaan felt a deep sense of empathy. He wished he could reassure the dog the way he wished someone would have reassured him when he was feeling alone. "He's going to be all right," the vet finally said after a thorough checkup. "He's had a rough time. We think he was abandoned, but with some care, he'll recover. I recommend a little rest and some good food to start." Ayaan's mother nodded. "We'll take good care of him." "Thank you." As they were about to leave, Ayaan approached the dog, kneeling beside him. "Hey there," he whispered softly. "I'm Ayaan. We're going to be okay, you know. We can help each other." The dog looked at him curiously, its tail giving a hesitant wag. Ayaan could feel the bond forming, even though they had only just met. He couldn't explain it, but there was something special about this dog. The first night with the dog was a mix of excitement and nervousness. Ayaan had prepared a small bed in his room, close to his own. He didn't want to leave Buddy. He had already decided that the dog's name would be Buddy, because that's what he needed most, a friend. Buddy was still skittish, his eyes wide as he cautiously explored Ayaan's room. He sniffed the corners, his ears perked up at every sound, unsure of what to make of his new home. Ayaan sat on the floor, watching, waiting patiently. He knew it would take time for Buddy to adjust. "Do you want some food?" Ayaan asked, holding out a small bowl of the wet food they had bought earlier. Buddy sniffed the food but didn't seem too interested. Instead, he settled down on the floor, curling into a tight ball near Ayaan's bed. Ayaan's heart sank a little. He had hoped that Buddy would be more enthusiastic about the new home, but he understood. It must be hard for Buddy, too. "Don't worry, Buddy," Ayaan whispered again, lying on his bed and reaching out his hand. "You don't have to be scared." For a moment, there was silence, and then, to Ayaan's delight, Buddy crawled closer to him, resting his head at the edge of the bed. Ayaan smiled, his heart swelling with warmth. They didn't need words to understand each other. They both knew what it was like to feel alone. Ayaan gently stroked Buddy's fur. It was soft, though still a little matted from the streets. "We'll fix you up," he murmured, already feeling protective. "You're safe now." As Ayaan drifted off to sleep, he realized that for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel so lonely. He had a friend now, one who would be by his side, no matter what. Over the next few days, Ayaan spent as much time as possible with Buddy. He brought him outside to the backyard, where they played fetch, though Buddy was still hesitant to run after the ball. But Ayaan didn't mind. He was content simply being near Buddy. Buddy had moments where he would hide under the couch or refuse to move, as if he was still afraid. But Ayaan always approached him gently, never forcing him to do anything he wasn't ready for. Slowly, very slowly, Buddy began to trust Ayaan. One afternoon, after a few days of companionship, Buddy crawled up to Ayaan while he was reading a book in the living room. The dog placed his head on Ayaan's lap and gave a soft whine, his eyes watching Ayaan with a mix of curiosity and gratitude. "Are you okay?" Ayaan asked, setting the book aside. He scratched behind Buddy's ears. "I think you're starting to like it here." Buddy's tail wagged faintly, and for the first time, he allowed Ayaan to give him a full petting without pulling away. Ayaan smiled widely. "You know, Buddy, I think I'm starting to like it here too. I think we're going to be great friends." Buddy looked up at him as if understanding every word. It was as if, in that moment, the two of them formed an unspoken agreement. They were in this together. No more loneliness. No more fear. The days turned into weeks, and Buddy continued to heal. His once matted fur grew shinier, and the limp in his step faded away. With each passing day, Buddy became more energetic, more playful, and more affectionate. And with each passing day, Ayaan felt a part of him heal as well. Buddy was no longer just a dog to him, he was a true friend. Ayaan began taking Buddy on walks through the neighborhood, and sometimes, Buddy would even run ahead, as if inviting Ayaan to chase him. The other kids in the neighborhood, who had once ignored Ayaan, began to notice. They started asking about Buddy, about how they could meet him, and slowly, Ayaan found himself talking to more and more of the kids. Buddy had broken the ice. One day, a group of kids approached him at the park as he was throwing a ball for Buddy. "Hey, is that your dog?" one of the boys asked. Ayaan nodded, a little nervous but proud. "Yeah, his name's Buddy. He's my best friend." "Cool," the boy said, smiling. "Can we pet him?" Ayaan hesitated for a moment but then nodded. Buddy trotted over to the group, sniffing each child eagerly, and within minutes, Ayaan found himself surrounded by other kids, laughing and talking. For the first time, Ayaan didn't feel left out. He wasn't the shy, quiet kid in the corner anymore. With Buddy by his side, he was starting to feel like he belonged. As the months passed, Ayaan and Buddy became inseparable. They shared everything: long walks, quiet evenings, adventures in the park, and even moments of stillness when they would sit together on the porch, watching the sunset. Ayaan began to feel something more than companionship. He felt a deep sense of purpose. He wasn't just looking after Buddy, Buddy was looking after him too. The dog had brought something into his life that Ayaan had never known before, a sense of being truly seen. One evening, as Ayaan sat in his room, Buddy at his feet, Ayaan thought about how much had changed since Buddy came into his life. The loneliness that had once plagued him now seemed like a distant memory. "I'm glad we found each other," Ayaan said softly, looking down at Buddy, who rested his head on Ayaan's lap, his eyes closing in contentment. "You're my best friend." "I never thought I'd say that about a dog, but here we are." Buddy let out a soft sigh, his body warm and relaxed, as if he understood everything Ayaan was saying. As the months passed, Ayaan and Buddy became the perfect pair. It wasn't just the other kids who noticed the bond between them, Ayaan's parents did too. His mother, who used to come home from work exhausted, now smiled every time she saw Ayaan playing with Buddy in the yard. His father, who had been distant, would often sit with Ayaan, talking about his day while Buddy lay at their feet, a quiet observer. But as much as Ayaan enjoyed his new life, things weren't always perfect. It was a bright Saturday morning when everything changed. Ayaan and Buddy were in the backyard, playing a game of fetch. Ayaan tossed the ball, and Buddy ran after it with his usual energy. But just as he was about to make the catch, he stumbled, letting out a yelp of pain before collapsing on the ground. Ayaan froze, his heart racing. He ran over to Buddy, kneeling beside him. "Buddy? Are you okay?" The dog whined softly, trying to stand but clearly in pain. Ayaan's stomach twisted with fear. "Mom," he screamed, running toward the house. His voice trembled as he called for his parents. His mother came rushing out of the house, panic in her eyes when she saw Buddy lying on the ground. "We need to take him to the vet, now," Ayaan's mother shouted. She helped Ayaan lift Buddy into the car, his body limp and unresponsive. The drive to the vet's office felt like an eternity. Ayaan could barely breathe as he watched Buddy's head rest against the seat, his eyes half closed. At the vet's office, Ayaan couldn't sit still. He paced the waiting room, glancing at the clock every few seconds, his thoughts racing. His mind kept replaying the moment Buddy had fallen. What if something was seriously wrong? What if they couldn't fix him? His mother sat beside him, her hand resting on his shoulder, but Ayaan barely noticed. His thoughts were consumed by worry for Buddy. Finally, after what felt like hours, the vet came out. "Is he going to be okay?" Ayaan asked immediately, his voice breaking. The vet nodded, though her expression was serious. "Buddy has a severe sprain in his leg. It's going to take some time to heal, but he should make a full recovery with some rest and proper care. I know this is stressful, but he's not in immediate danger." Ayaan let out a sigh of relief. It wasn't as bad as he had feared. Still, the thought of Buddy being in pain made Ayaan's chest ache. "When can we bring him home?" Ayaan asked, his voice shaky. "You can take him home today," the vet replied. "But remember, Buddy will need plenty of rest and no playing for a while. He'll need to stay calm for the next couple of weeks." Ayaan nodded. He didn't care how long it took, he just wanted Buddy back home with him. Over the next several weeks, Ayaan's life took on a slower pace. Buddy, once so full of energy, now spent his days lying in his bed, his leg wrapped in a soft bandage. Ayaan stayed close, bringing Buddy his favorite toys, sitting with him while he rested, and talking to him about his day. The first few days after the injury were the hardest. Buddy seemed frustrated with his immobility. He would try to get up, only to whimper in pain and lie back down again. Ayaan, too, felt a sense of helplessness. He wanted so badly to make Buddy feel better, to take away the pain. But as the days went by, Ayaan realized that this situation was teaching him something important. He had always taken Buddy's companionship for granted, but now, in Buddy's time of need, Ayaan learned how much care and patience true friendship required. Ayaan spent more time talking to Buddy than ever before, telling him about his school, his friends, and even the things that had been bothering him. He found that, in a way, Buddy's quiet presence was all he needed. Buddy never judged him or interrupted, he just listened, his head resting on Ayaan's lap. "Even though you can't run around with me right now," Ayaan whispered one night, his fingers gently stroking Buddy's fur, "I know we're still together. That's all that matters." Buddy gazed up at him, his tail wagging weakly. There was a deep trust in the dog's eyes, and in that moment, Ayaan realized that their bond wasn't just built on fun and play, it was built on something deeper, something unspoken. After about 3 weeks of careful healing, Buddy's leg was nearly better. He was walking on it with a slight limp but no longer seemed in pain. Ayaan could see the spark of his old energy returning. And yet, in the back of his mind, he couldn't shake the feeling that something else was about to change. It came one bright Saturday morning, when Ayaan and Buddy were playing in the park. They had walked there together, Ayaan carefully watching Buddy's every step to make sure he didn't overdo it. As they walked along the path, a group of children playing nearby caught Ayaan's attention. He watched them laughing and running around. He had almost forgotten the simple joy of playing outside without a care in the world. But as Ayaan's attention was diverted, he didn't notice the sudden movement. A small child, no more than 6 years old, had wandered into the street, directly in the path of an oncoming car. The car wasn't speeding, but it was moving quickly, and the child didn't seem to notice the danger. Ayaan froze, his heart pounding in his chest. "Hey, watch out," he screamed, but the child didn't hear him. Time seemed to slow as the car came closer. Then, out of nowhere, Buddy lunged forward. With a strength Ayaan hadn't expected, Buddy bolted past Ayaan and dashed toward the child, barking loudly. In a split second, Buddy reached the child and grabbed the back of their jacket with his teeth, pulling them back just as the car screeched to a halt. The driver slammed on the brakes, but Buddy had already done the unimaginable. The child was safe. Ayaan rushed over, breathless, as Buddy stood protectively in front of the child, panting heavily, his legs still a little stiff but somehow still strong enough to save a life. "Buddy! You saved him!" Ayaan gasped, kneeling down to hug his dog, his heart racing. "You're amazing!" The child, crying in shock, was now in the arms of their mother, who had arrived on the scene, but they both looked at Buddy with awe. "Thank you! Thank you so much," the woman exclaimed, her voice full of gratitude. "You saved my son's life." Ayaan looked at Buddy, his heart swelling with pride and love. He had always thought of Buddy as a friend, but now, he saw Buddy as something more, a true hero. Buddy wagged his tail, standing tall, as if he knew the impact of what he had done. For Ayaan, it was a reminder that sometimes, the best friendships are built on acts of love and courage that go beyond words. After the heroic rescue, Ayaan and Buddy became local heroes, but more importantly, they became even closer. People would stop them in the street to talk about the rescue, but Ayaan wasn't interested in the praise. What mattered most to him was the way Buddy had changed his life and how he continued to do so every single day. Through Buddy, Ayaan had learned so many important lessons: patience, courage, kindness, and the importance of being there for those you love. Ayaan had been a lonely child when he first met Buddy, but now, he was part of a family that included both people and pets, all bound together by love. One evening, as Ayaan and Buddy sat together on the porch, watching the sunset, Ayaan spoke quietly to his best friend. "You know, Buddy," Ayaan said, "I never thought I'd be this happy. I was so lonely before, and now, I have you. I don't ever want to lose you." Buddy's tail thumped gently against the ground as he lay by Ayaan's side. Ayaan smiled, leaning down to give him one last scratch behind the ears. "Thank you," he whispered. "You've given me more than I could ever ask for. I think we're going to be all right together." And as they sat in the peaceful silence, Ayaan knew in his heart that Buddy was more than just a dog. He was a friend, a protector, a hero, and most of all, family.